Welcome everybody to the Monday Night Tours. We are your guides on this magical journey that is through the Monday Night Wars. I am Josh Kaiser, and I am joined today by Kyle Hoagland.
Class is in session, quoting Ahmed Johnson. What's going on, everybody?
How is it going? You know, sometimes I listen to this intro, like you can't hear the intro when we're recording.
Right, it's awkward. Very awkward for me.
But I get to hear it, and I gotta say, sometimes I just rock out. You know, sometimes I
can see you bobbing your head. I can see it.
I'm doing a little air guitar. I'm ready. I am pumped up, and I am. It got me jazzed, Kyle. Of course, we're discussing the November 27th, 1995 editions of Nitro and Raw, and if that guitar riff doesn't get you pumped up for the Monday Night Tours, then you probably got rocks for brains, if I can quote the great Mongo McMichael.
I would say Mongo sounds like some Mongo shit right there. And hopefully our enthusiasm and everything is going to get everybody. I forgot what the hell that shit that's in Turkey. Hope everyone had a safe holiday weekend, and hope the whatever the fucking turkey drug that is that makes sleepy. Hopefully we'll be able to knock that out of you today.
Well, if we can't knock it out of you, I'm sure Pepe and Mongo did with their tiger skin and snake skin attires that they were wearing.
And before we even say anything like that, did you notice that they actually said that they're live from Salem, Virginia? They actually name dropped that fucking city.
They sure did. Hey, you know what? There are people who listen to us from Salem, Virginia. Probably not, but I'm going to pretend like there are, and I would think that you would offend them by not.
We appreciate your patronage, Salem, Virginia.
Hey, you know what, though? They were a hot crowd, Kyle, and, they were blessed with Mongo wearing a tiger skin shirt with, a black vest over it. And he said they were both wearing, animal attire because they're eating raw meat. Get it, raw? As in Monday Night Raw, as in they're going to be eating the raw in Monday Night Raw. When
is Larry Sabisco going to get on the fucking show? That's all. I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for Larry.
Hey, don't forget Tony's got to be on there at some point too. So we've got a lot coming. But for now, we're blessed with that which is Mongo McMichael. And we also have Bobby Heenan, who, of course, is waving a mini Japanese flag. So,
As you do.
Right. Of course, the show opens up. This is the follow-up show, Kyle, to World War III. And they're discussing, of course, the controversial ending, I should say, to World War III, where Macho Man Randy Savage, as we all predicted, wins the title. I believe it was just last week, Kyle, that Go Home show, you mentioned how he was battling a tricep injury, that they were kind of writing the story, and now he's your world champion.
Yeah, that was kind of out of left field because I actually thought they were going to write him out of. I'm actually kind of shocked that I forgot that Macho Man was, because I was watching Nitro at this time, so I'm actually kind of surprised. I feel a little dirty that I completely forgot about Macho Man's reign of terror.
Right. I was not watching it this time, but after I saw him win it, when I was watching, I said, "Oh, that's right. I do remember him winning the World War III." But that said, we'll kind of get into that as the show goes on. They do follow this up, Kyle, by showing a promo from World War III before the big World War III happened, and of course, it was Hogan ripping off the dark side. He's no longer donning the black apparel that he was wearing, and he's growing the mustache back. The Hulkamania is back on the light side, brother, and he's also got a friend forever in Sting. So Sting, Macho Man, Hogan worked things out, Kyle, and we're no longer from the dark side of Venice Beach. And they also burned it all in a little trash fire that I think got out of control. But
that's some very dangerously flammable cloth that Hogan uses to make his clothing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the show starts up, Kyle. We've got a rematch from World War III. Of course, for those of you who may have watched World War III as a prelude to this episode of Nitro, you were, of course, given a bunch of matches that had no promotion whatsoever if you watched any of Nitro leading up to it. And one of them was the opening match for World War III, which is our opening match tonight. Johnny B. Bad versus Diamond Dallas Page. And of course, if you didn't watch it and you wonder, why is Diamond Doll coming out with Johnny B. Bad? Well, Diamond Doll put up her managerial services to the winner of the match at World War III, which of course Johnny B. Bad won. It was a long, I'd say probably 20-ish minute match. Pretty good match between the two of them that they had, where, of course, Johnny B. Bad does pull out the victory at the end. Unfortunately, tonight on Nitro, you're not going to get anything near that. And before the match even starts, Kyle, how about Johnny B. Bad comes up into the ring, sits down on the middle rope, of course, being the gentleman that he is, letting...
I'm glad you noticed this, too. Yeah, God.
You know, it's typical. You have a female valet with you, so you sit on the middle rope. If you're playing the baby face wrestler, so you sit on the middle rope, you know, kind of opening up the gap for her to, you know, squeeze through the middle rope, between the middle and top. For whatever reason, Kimberly says, I don't
know. I think Kimberly did not mess this up. Usually the women do go under the middle rope because of the dress that they're wearing, because if they go too much in the middle and the cameras are at the lower end, they accidentally might see something like underwear and stuff like that. So usually what the guys do is that they lift the top rope.
The middle rope. You're right. Maybe that is what they do. Anyway, she goes way underneath it. It was pretty,
she nailed it.
She sure did. And then, of course, Diamond Dallas Page comes out. He's looking pretty sad and mopey. He's got a bouquet of flowers. Obviously, very distraught over losing Kimberly the night before. He has seen the error of his ways, Kyle.
Clearly.
And he comes out, hands the roses to Kimberly. She's not sure how to respond, and it doesn't matter because the diabolical Dallas turns and sucker punches Johnny B. Bad, which of course cues Nick Patrick to ring the bell to start the match. And, you know, just typical Nick Patrick. I don't think he ever went to school of wrestling or refereeing because he doesn't know his job. The match itself, Kyle, is pretty short. Not much to say. Kimberly, they keep focusing on Kimberly on the outside. She's looking at the roses, and eventually she reaches into the middle of the roses.
You mean they only focus on Kimberly?
That's pretty much. She reaches down into the bouquet of roses and pulls out like a chain, a nice steel chain. Yeah, as you would find in there. And needless to say, at one point, Diamond Dallas Page turns and looks to her with his legs spread wide open and says, "Toss me the chain." She's not sure. She kind of half-assed throws the chain towards him, but it goes underneath his legs. Johnny B. Bad grabs it, sucker punches Diamond Dallas Page with the chain. Of course, Nick Patrick didn't see any of this happen because he's a fantastic ref. And that's the 3 count. And needless to say, after the match, Diamond Dallas seems both confused on what she did, but also happy that Johnny B. Bad won. It's kind of confusing there. And Johnny B. Bad also seems confused on why she tossed him the chain. And overall, it was just kind of confusing all around. I gave this a 1.25 stars. They had a great match at World War III. If you want to see the two of them put on a good match, go check that one out if you didn't. At best, this continues a feud between the two of them and sort of this, I don't know if love triangle is the right word, because I don't know if necessarily Johnny B. Bad has romantic feelings for Kimberly. I think he just wants her to be treated correctly. And, of course, Diamond Dallas is not doing that at this point. What did you think, Kyle?
I gave this a little bit better rating because I thought the storytelling was all right. I gave it a 1.75 stars, and I understand what they're doing, but like the problem I had was that too much of this match was being shot from Kimberly's perspective. It was like behind her shoulder or to the side, even when she wasn't even doing anything. I understand that you do it when she pulls out the chain and she's feeling a little like conflicted. What do I do?
Yeah, there are moments you need to focus on her, sure.
Sure, but I'm like literally probably 90% plus was that camera shot. And so because of that, you really weren't focused on the match between two decent talents in the ring, which is kind of a shame. But once again, you know, that's the way the match is supposed to kind of more tell a story more than really like showcase a great match. That's what you're going to have World War III for. But I've always just hated when there's a title up for grabs and there's really no substance for a title match. That's always kind of annoyed me, which is also why I gave it a sub 2-star rating. Also, there's a little bit cloudy on where Diamond Doll's allegiances are at because she's kind of like not being very truthful with. So either she's a complete airhead or there's something else going on between her and Diamond Dallas Page, and we just don't know yet about it.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify: was the title on the line in that match? Did they say it was?
I believe it was. I believe that the first match was a TV title rematch. Yeah,
and that's possible. I don't know. It again, not really important the way it ended. After the match, we do get the commentary team kind of discusses the main event, which, of course, Sting and Luger are teaming up against the Brian Pillman and Arn Anderson. So they're kind of discussing who's on whose side, who's backing who, and all this, what's happening with Sting and Luger, which will kind of be the focal point of the show going forward. But we are then blessed with Taskmaster and Jimmy Hart being interviewed by Mean Gene. And Kyle, of course, if anyone's going to find out what's going on with Lex and Sting, it's going to be Mean Gene. He's our reporter on the streets, if you will. And this is kind of a bizarre little moment because Kevin Sullivan and Jimmy Hart kind of get into it here. They're questioning whose allegiance with who because, why, what's going on with Sting? Is he friends with Lex? Lex is part of the Dungeon of Doom, and what's Sting's thing? And then the two of them kind of get into an argument, but then Jimmy Hart says, you know what? Hey, Kevin, I have a plan for Sting. And they laugh and walk off. So
good enough for him.
Yeah, I guess that meant they're friends again. But you pointed out, if you have a plan for Sting, why would you announce it for everybody to hear?
Yeah, it's just like, don't worry, Lex and I have a plan for Sting. And it's like, Sting's in the back right now probably sharing once again, kayfabe, sharing a locker room with Lex, watching this interview, and you don't think Sting's like looking over at Lex like, what the fuck's that supposed to mean?
Right,
and Lex is
exactly.
like, I don't know.
So kind of a bizarre thing. But then Kyle, we get our
get more bizarre.
We do get more bizarre, really. And no, not Goldust, but instead we get Cutie Suzuki, which I don't know if that's her ring name or what, but I think it's a great Japanese female wrestler name. And Mayumi Ozaki versus Bull Nakano and Akira Hokuto, who of course were accompanied by Sonny Ono. And Kyle, I'm going to let you discuss this match.
Well, thank you very much, and I think you and I both agreed that this was probably, and not to go all the way to the end of the show, we think this might have taken the trophy home for match of the podcast. Surprisingly,
before you start, I'm sorry, I meant to point this out. This match happened at World War III as well. Of course, World War III, right. Nobody had any idea what the card was until you watched it. But this was another match that did take place on the card. So we are now 2 for 2 on Nitro with the rematches from the night before.
Gotcha. So I did see a sign in the audience that looked way too well created and designed for it to be a fan of Salem, Virginia. And once again, thank you for your patronage, Salem, Virginia. I would love for somebody to send me your reiteration of this sign. But it said, if your Monday morning turns raw by Monday night, then cure them both with Nitro. And I said, it just looked way too good of a sign. Like, penmanship was impeccable. Yeah. It was just perfectly done. Clearly was not fan-made. Anyways, moving on to the actual match. So as far as the tag team match, when I first saw this, I'm like, okay, it's the first two women that came out, it looks like they were just wearing like feathery bathing suits. And then the only person I ever even knew or heard of was Bull Nakano. And I knew that she wrestled in the WWF and she got fired because she was caught with possession of cocaine. So that's why she apparently WCW has more lenient drug policies. So I guess WCW's one company's trash is another company's treasure. Which is surprising because
you see Doc Hendricks on a weekly basis on Raw.
Absolutely. Well, clearly that dude, he's clean, man. He probably just has a lot of rich chocolate Ovaltine. That's why he's got all that energy. But once again, you look at this and you're like, it totally looks like Bull Nakano and Akira are going to just whoop on these two, bathing suit Japanese tourists. But really, I was kind of surprised by this whole thing. The first thing also that I noticed, too, is one of the classic Japanese tropes as far as women wrestling is the absolutely brutal hair tossing. Like, they must just have stronger roots over there in the land of the rising sun, because Bull Nakano was just tossing bitches through by the hair. Like, I'm shocked she did not have hair still stuck in her hands. Then they name drop Kensuke Sasaki. For those who don't remember him, he had a match, I believe it was last week, on a taped episode of Nitro. No, it was 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. Yep.
Yeah. And because he's actually married to Akira, who's tagging up with Bull Nakano. And then they also name drop, as they would, like, kind of like a Chris Benoit is the fourth member of the Horsemen. He is your current U.S. champion. Obviously, I don't know, did the U.S. champion fight at all during World War III? Was that even a thing at all? Do you know?
Let me verify that. I believe he did. Give me just a second on that. Keep talking about the match.
And I also only assume that Sting didn't get like a rematch. Anyways, and like I said, what better place to announce something so important as the second biggest title changing hands than during a women's tag match?
And that's right. He did. I had a brief. He defeated Chris Benoit. So Chris Benoit had a United States Championship match, of course, as you would assume after the zero build up for that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So basically, Sting is no longer in the U.S. title picture, probably at all, even though he only lost one match. Anyways. Correct. Let's go back to Heenan.
He had a match against Ric Flair, which, of course, would be a great build-up, great pay-per-view match to have build-up for that they didn't. But
right, mind. Absolutely. But speaking of no build-up, Heenan's just going to go ahead and just go full-on racist, drop in every single Oriental ching chong bing bong that you can throw that was acceptable during the 90s. Pretty sure he dropped Oriental, which at this point in this day and age, the only time Oriental is acceptable is if that's the flavor of ramen soup you're having that afternoon. But once again, different times. All jokes aside,
he called one of them attractive in an Oriental kind of way. I don't know, even in 1995, if that is an appropriate way of saying anything.
Yeah, that's podium apology type material right there.
Yeah,
but once again, it's Heenan, and in all honesty, wrestling I think still hadn't like catapulted into the craziness that 97, 98, 99 kind of became. He probably had to watch his words a little bit better. But then again, that was also during the Attitude Era. You probably could have said worse during that time. But all jokes aside, we're making fun of this match. But honestly, this was an awesome match. A lot of hard bumps, a lot of great overall execution of moves. Did I say excellence in execution of these moves? You had a dragon suplex, Northern Lights, a couple decent double team reversals, a double missile drop kick, and then finally this absolutely like fucking sick fisherman's brainbuster by Akira, once again, wife of Kensuke Sasaka, your current U.S. champion. And she got the pin after that. I gave this 2 3/4 stars. Maybe I'm being too nice, but I walked into this thinking that this was going to be garbage. I was just going to have to just fast forward through this. This was the Guardians of the Galaxy of women's tag matches because even though there was some sloppiness, overall, this was an amazing match, considering what I thought this match might have been.
Absolutely. I gave it 2.5 stars, and I can't disagree with your, extra quarter there. I expected nothing from this match, and honestly, this match was better than their match at World War III the night before. And it's women's tag team wrestling on WCW in 1995. You're not expecting if anything, you're expecting it to be, like you said, trash.
Well, there's no division for women's wrestling, so it's almost like, what are they fighting for?
Right. You know what? They're just fighting for pride, Kyle. And they had a couple of unique moves. I saw a top rope sleeper, which I don't think I've ever seen executed ever in the history of wrestling. So it was kind of neat seeing that. They did a double top rope coup de grace, which, of course, Heenan quipped was the Oriental Heimlich. So yet again, just dropping his racism or casual racism or whatever you want to call it. But honestly, the match, very entertaining. Was very happy with it. Like I said, 2.5 stars. After that, we have the Saturday night promo. This week, Kyle, we get to look forward to Sting versus Kurosawa. Dean Malenko is going to be on the card, whatever the hell that means, or he'll be at the show anyways. American Males as well. And Jim Duggan's going to enact some revenge from World War III on VK Wall Street. Of course, VK Wall Street interfered in that taped fist match that Jim Duggan had with Scott Norton. Or, I'm not Scott Norton, Big Bubba.
Big Bubba. I'm still shocked that VK Wall Street's still getting work. So kudos to VK Wall Street.
He's jobbing left and right, but he's still around. Speaking of jobbing left and right, the next matchup, Kyle, of course, Hugh Morris is wrestling Hulk Hogan, because why would you not throw this match in the middle of the card?
Did you forget, just like I did, that Hugh Morris was in the Dungeon of Doom? Were you aware that he was there?
Yes, I was aware he was part of the Dungeon of Doom.
Okay, once again, that was also kind of like slipped in there.
And I don't know. I guess I should say I knew that he was a member of Dungeon of Doom from my memory of watching wrestling from that like 97, 98 era when he and Ming were kind of like together with Jimmy Hart. I don't remember if he was part of the dungeon. I don't know if he like joined the Dungeon of Doom at this point and like I missed it or something. I guess I just kind of assumed he was there, but maybe he did just join them. I don't know. There's not much to say about this match, Kyle. Ultimately, they're mentioning that Hogan has some footage from Macho Man about this controversial ending to World War III, which he's going to be bringing to him soon. Probably the biggest thing worth mentioning is Hugh Morris goes for his patented moonsault, and he kind of overshoots it and really does like a moonsault flying headbutt kind of move, which leads to a 2 count. And then ultimately Hogan starts to do his no-sell hulking up right afterwards. And then you get your big boot and a leg drop for the 3 count. And Mongo quips that Hogan is going through the Dungeon of Doom like he's whacking wheat. So we are blessed yet again, Kyle. It will be a sad day when Mongo McMichael is no longer on this commentary team. I give this 1 3/4 stars.
Yeah, same thing. Some missed spots. We knew the ending to this. Like there was really no intrigue to this match. I also gave it 1 3/4.
Yeah, kind of just a pointless match all around. I guess to me it's interesting if you're going to have Hogan wrestle on a card. Why? I mean, I guess he's the Dungeon of Doom, and that's worth something. But I think they could have done something better with him here.
I mean, maybe we shouldn't complain too much. We're getting to see Hogan wrestle on Nitro.
Yeah, I suppose so. After this, we got a quick promo selling the encore presentation of World War III, in case you're interested in checking
Which,
that
by
out.
the way, overall, Nitro did a much better job of recapping what happened on this pay-per-view than they did with Halloween Havoc.
Yeah, that's fair. I remember you brought that up with Halloween Havoc, that they just kind of left you in the dark until after the matches.
Yeah, you were 2 weeks. The Nitro after it, you really didn't know anything. You didn't know about Lex. You didn't really know who was the champion. It was very confusing for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. And you pretty much know all the main things that happened at World War III for the most part.
Well, I think the only thing that was really, or at least what was billed on TV, which was basically just the world title battle royal. We knew about that. By the way, did we find out who were the 3 giants?
There was no 3 giants.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I don't know what the 3 giant thing was. I couldn't figure that out. I watched it, and I'm like, they made no mention of it. It was just really strange. And the Yeti was in the match. Of course, he's dressed like a ninja now. And he was one of the first contestants eliminated in the match. So really,
he's done.
Fall
buried
for grace for the Yeti. It was just, weird. I don't know what that was all about. The only thing I could think is the Giant, the Yeti, and One Man Gang were bigger people in the match, but even then, I don't know. That said, after this, the winner of the World War III, of course, is now the world champion. That's the Macho Man Randy Savage, and he is out talking with Mean Gene, and he opens up by saying this reign of terror could be just one day or it could be forever and a day. He doesn't care. He's just happy he's got the title. Hogan shows up shortly thereafter and says his name's still on the title, and he's got the footage he's ready to queue up to show Macho Man what he's talking about, why he still was never officially eliminated. He said he was pulled out from underneath the ropes as opposed to going over the top. So they start to show it. They show the elimination of the Giant, Luger, and Sting, I think all went out together, and then Hogan's just getting ready to get pulled out, and then, of course, it goes snowy, and the feed gets cut out, and there's no more footage. And immediately the Giant comes out, attacks Macho Man and Hogan. There's some choke slams that ensue, and Giant takes Hogan to the ring. Of course, this leads to Sting to coming out to help save the day for Hogan. And then Hogan goes ape shit, Kyle. He grabs a chair, and he starts laying in some of the weakest chair shots you will ever see in the history of chair shots.
They're more like chair mushes. Just kind of mushed his face. Or mushed his back.
Really embarrassing, to be honest, the way he did it. And this is coming from a guy who threw the Giant off a roof and killed him, a month prior. Now he's taking weak chair shots. So I don't know, maybe he's got, remorse of what happened in the past. But I laughed with all these chair shots he's given the Giant. He throws an elbow on one of the refs that were like trying to break it off, and it was kind of one of those like accidental elbows. Man, the commentary booth lost their mind over that elbow to the referee.
Fines will be administered.
Absolutely.
And it won't be the last time that the ref takes a spill later either.
There you go. Mongo does say that he doesn't want the new champ to die on his first day. And Kyle, I don't know if you noticed this or not. They refer to the new champ a lot during this episode of Nitro. They hardly ever refer to him as Macho Man Randy Savage, which is, who he is and a very famous big name. They just kept saying the new champion. And that's what, like, Mongo said. I hope the new champion doesn't die on his first day. Like, why not? I hope Macho Man doesn't die on his first day as champion or something. Like, I don't know if you noticed it or not, I thought it was really strange. They kept referring to him as the new champion.
I think they're just building the whole, like, this is what's interesting in the world of wrestling is that there's a new world champion. So they're going to keep hitting that kind of hard for the TV audience.
Well,
I kind of understand it.
It's not like they're saying the new world champion, Macho Man Randy Savage. They're saying the new champion. Like, they're not correlating the two together. I don't know. It just stood out as weird to me.
Right.
So, anyways, they go back to the booth and they're talking about, why did Sting stop Hogan from doing more damage? Which
seems like a total non-story. Anyways.
Yeah. And they're talking about how Sting called off Luger when Luger was attacking Savage. Of course, this was the night before Luger had a match with Savage and almost broke Savage's arm during their match. This was all warm up for World War III, and another marquee match that you didn't know was happening until you started watching World War III. So those are kind of the stories they're pushing, and then we get to our main event, Kyle. We got Brian Pillman and Arn Anderson versus Sting and Luger. And I don't know if you caught this or not. Of course, the Four Horsemen come out first to the Four Horsemen music, which I enjoy. I really like the Four Horsemen theme. Then Sting comes out, and they're like, "Oh, where's Luger? Is Luger not coming?"
I almost wrote it in, but I honestly, I know what you're getting at about the fact that Luger did not come out with Sting. In fact, it was kind of like an awkward pause with no music.
Well, and that's what. That's why. At first, I was like, "Oh, they're trying to push this thing," but then like he doesn't come out, and then he's like kind of sprinting, like he was like, "Oh shit, I didn't realize it was my time to go on." Like I feel like Luger doesn't pay attention in the backstage.
Hey man, he's a chatterbug out in the back. Everyone knows that.
So, needless to say, he gets into the match. As for the match itself. Not a whole lot to say too much about it. They do at one point. Luger hits the flying forearm, and then Heenan brings up the steel plate in his arm from I think he said it was a motorcycle accident or something. Yeah,
motorcycle accident. Which, by the way, I looked back and I did fact check. That actually is a true thing, but not like anything that actually could do any like remote harm to anybody.
Oh,
he does have a small metal plate that's there to cover the two screws that are in his forearm.
But I just remember that being a WWF storyline that he used the steel plate in his forearm and get DQ'd. Yeah, because he wasn't allowed to use it. So it just made me laugh that was.
That's how he lost in DQ to Yokozuna during his like Man Made in the USA tour, and he got his one title match, and I think he actually counted out Yokozuna thanks to the metal plate.
That sounds accurate. Anyways, they keep the commentary team talking about how Sting and Luger are teaming up, but they're not really interacting with each other or talking. They're just, doing their job. At one point, Sting gets a Scorpion Deathlock on Arn, and Pillman goes to the top rope like you think he's going to try to break the hold. And Luger goes to kind of push him off, but pushes him in the direction of Sting, so Pillman hits Sting, and then there's a little more questioning, did Luger do that on purpose or not? Then, of course, Luger, a couple minutes later, ends up breaking up a pin, and he attacks both Arn Anderson and Pillman. So it kind of shot that down pretty quickly, I thought. And eventually there's a roll-up by Sting on Pillman for a quick 3 count. And as he's doing that, Flair comes out and attacks Luger, and then he starts attacking Sting. And the Four Horsemen kind of started, all attacking Sting and Luger. Then Hogan comes down. He and Flair get into it. And then the Four Horsemen get out of there. Hogan goes to attack Luger then, apparently trying to enact some revenge from Halloween Havoc, which Sting stops. Ultimately, it's kind of like all over the place, Kyle, and for all the star power in that match, that could have been a much better main event. I gave it a 1.5 stars.
Yeah, I mean, the match is fine. I gave it 2 stars. No one really screwed up on their spots. You got the star power. some intrigue thanks to the whole where Luger stands thing, but it's still totally confusing. This whole like Hogan, Sting, Luger thing. It's almost like a rock, paper, scissors and trust. And WCW is in danger of making this way too confusing if they keep going this way, because they're just going to write themselves into a corner. And usually what happens is if they can't figure a way to make sense of it, they just kill it. Like that's how WCW works. Like they'll just be like, oh, that never happened, and then well, let's hope that that's not the case. These are three big stars in the company.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, then the show kind of closes out at the commentary booth as usual. They discuss Macho Man's status is up in the air. Mongo still thinks he might be dead. They mentioned to, of course, don't forget to watch the encore presentation of World War III. And there's going to be an update on Starrcade, which, of course, will be their big December pay-per-view. But you'll find out about that update at WCW Saturday Night this Saturday. And then, of course, we close out, as normal, with Mongo howling. Because
this is for the second time of the show.
Yeah. Yeah, Mongo's been howling lately for whatever fucking reason.
Because he's got nothing. He's not Heenan. He doesn't have anything to say, so he just does
howls.
That.
Yeah. For me, Kyle, the show overall was all right. You and I both agree the women's match definitely surprised and was entertaining. Best show of the night, easily. They did discuss some storylines that happened at World War III, so we got to give them credit there that they're improved from their Halloween Havoc follow up. So it's good to see that they're building on some storylines. Overall, a solid show, even with a crap main event. So I was okay with it. How about you?
Well, definitely the stars were out tonight, which a lot of times I'm surprised after the pay-per-view, because I think for Halloween Havoc, the Nitro after, like nobody was there for that show. So I was very surprised that we had that many stars for the comeback show of World War III. It was a good thing for Nitro, but sadly the highlight of the night was the women's tag match, even with all the star power out. But they definitely stole the show. The rest of the matches were either too story driven to care about a good quality match, or it was Hogan in a match. So, what are you going to do, brother, when the 25, 8, however long his arms are. But overall, I did enjoy the Nitro. It wasn't bad.
All right. So then let's jump ship over here to Raw now, Kyle, and we open right up kind of where we left off last week. We're doing a recap of the collapse of Shawn Michaels. Of course, if you recall, we had that kind of ominous ending. Did he really collapse? Was it a shoot? Was it a work? Of course, we know now it was obviously all part of the storyline. He was kind of healing from his attack, the concussion, all that, and they kind of wrote it into the story. But it was kind of funny here, Kyle. I don't know if you noticed or not, but they do the whole narration of Vince of what happened to Shawn Michaels, and he's like, actually, I think he ends something. Where's my notes here?
He'll be just as flamboyant and as resilient as
no. That was later. That was the later.
Oh yeah, right. I forgot there were two promos of Shawn Michaels on the show.
Oh, this is what he says. He says he's talking about how like every superstar enters. In the back of their mind, there's always a chance that they could get hurt inside the ring and stuff. And he said, this is a stark reminder that this could happen to anyone. This is a stark reminder of the brutality, something to that effect, right? No sooner does he say that about being a stark reminder and kind of ends on that dark tone, they cut to their, opening for Raw, which starts out with Shawn Michaels, like, dancing. And I thought it was
dancing on the building, yeah.
Yeah, it was a dancing Michaels, and I thought it was just like a funny, like, they went from him being like this dead guy to like, hey, everything's fine, dancing Michaels. Of course, then we actually get into the show. You got Vince and King standing there letting you know what's going on tonight. They're going to update us on Shawn Michaels after they just talked about what happened to Shawn Michaels. Of course, our main event, Kyle, Undertaker versus Kama. We're trying to get back those power of the urn. Of course, Kama took the urn from Undertaker at some point earlier this year, melted it down into that gold chain he's wearing.
Which gold chain has also morphed into different versions of the chain somehow. It was, I don't know if you ever seen like footage when it first turned into the chain, and then now the chain they have now is completely different. It's way bigger now. I just thought that was funny that they've actually changed the prop of the chain.
Yep, I know exactly what you mean. That is
also another reminder that not only are they promoting this match tonight, they promoted it last week. So keep that in the back of your head as we keep talking about the show.
Yeah, that's correct. And then they also mentioned that Hitman's going to get an interview by Brother Love, who Vince let you know is back and fat. So I'm sure Pritchard appreciated that. And then we got our opening bout, Kyle, and I'm going to let you discuss this because it's got of course, the ravishing Rad Radford versus the...
Hey, it's the Rad one.
the Rad one, yeah, that's right. The Rad one, Rad Radford, versus the all-business, all-man Ahmed Johnson, as Vince McMahon likes to say. Your favorite and mine, or not. What'd you think about the match, Kyle?
I actually gave credit to Rad Radford for actually putting out some sort of offense on the show. I feel like Rad Radford is like, I wouldn't say Barry Horowitz, because Barry Horowitz has won a couple matches, but I feel like Rad's kind of in that middling of, he's a jobber clearly, but he doesn't just get squashed in most matches. He usually will put a little bit of offense. He works the crowd a little bit as a heel. I've also been told that he's trying to be a Body Donna, which Vince mentioned at some point during the match. Which is like, why would you want to join the group that also jobs to everybody? But whatever. I mean, I guess those are your goals. Go for it. The Rad one. So Rad goes on the offensive assault kind of early. Does like kind of like, those arm dragon twists and all that stuff. And Ahmed just finds that silly, gives him a back elbow for his trouble. Then they go to the crowd where Bob Backlund is continuing his presidential campaign angle, which I guess makes sense because it's Rad Radford versus Ahmed Johnson. Might as well pull away from that, amazing match. Radford then gets Ahmed to the outside so he could try to get the momentum back by doing some heel tactics, smashing the face onto the apron, things like that. So then you go back in the ring. Ahmed is back in front with a short arm clothesline. And then he hits this actually half decent scissor kick that even Booker T would have been like, that's all right. Not bad. It's not as great, but it was honestly wasn't bad. Then he does like another weird side kick, which was not as good. I'm like, all right. You're being too much, trying to be too much of a Booker T in this. Then it goes spine buster and then the Pearl River plunge for the win. I actually also laughed at when he came down to the ring, because one of the I guess the jokes is wrestlers come out to the ring like soaking wet and then they leave the match drier than they were at the beginning of the match. He was completely dry after he actually won. Basically, just wiped all the water onto Rad Radford and his outfit. I gave this honestly 2 stars, and maybe I'm just giving Ahmed Johnson way too much credit, but he didn't look that bad. And at least he's making up for his real lack of wrestling talent with some actual high impact, hard hitting moves. Like, he's not the kind of guy that's going to like do, technical wrestling moves or, kind of like hammer locks and that. He's just going to pound you with, hard hitting moves, power bombs, hard clotheslines, things that are actually going to make you go like, ow, like he's really going after him. So he definitely throws in some heavy offense. So for that, I had to give it a little bit higher than maybe he deserves. I gave it 2 stars.
Yeah, I mean, I gave it 1.5 stars. I agree. The scissor kick was impressive for him, but it doesn't come anywhere near close to Booker T. And honestly, that might be the first and only time I will ever mention Booker T and Ahmed Johnson in the same sentence. But either way, I didn't think he had that kick in him. So being able to do it, props to you, Ahmed Johnson.
Which, by the way, he's still alive.
Yeah, that's right. Even though his career was dead long before it began. The Pearl River plunge setup was bizarre. I think he got thrown off the ropes and then came back and just put him into it. But this is about as good as match as we're going to expect from Ahmed Johnson at this time. So props to, Rad Radford for bringing it out of him.
Absolutely. And once again, right now what we've learned is that when if Kaiser's going to rate an Ahmed Johnson match, a star and a half is a 4-star match for Ahmed Johnson.
Yeah, pretty much. So after the match, of course, we get a post-match interview with Jerry the King Lawler interviewing Ahmed Johnson. And he kind of cuts down on Ahmed Johnson, but he keeps saying that Dean Douglas said you're this, Dean Douglas said you're that, to try to put some heat on it. And apparently Dean Douglas and Ahmed Johnson have a match at In Your House this December. Dean Douglas then shows up, compliments Ahmed Johnson's physique for a minute, and then basically tells him that inside the ring it's his classroom, which Ahmed Johnson says, "Ring the bell, class is starting, fool." And they go to Dean Douglas pretends like he's about to get into the ring, and then those refs that came out of nowhere from last week and detained Marty Jannetty, Kyle, they're back and they're holding Dean Douglas from getting in there.
That roving band of refs. And by the way, did you need to use closed? I didn't have to use closed captioning this time to know what Ahmed Johnson said this week. So another well done Ahmed Johnson. Like, I was actually surprised that he actually spoke somewhat coherently this week.
Yeah, I actually understood him, so maybe he's getting a little bit better with his dictation. But I don't know. We'll see. After this, we get a World Tour de Force promo, Kyle, which the only thing worth mentioning is they're coming to the Gund Arena in Cleveland. So shout out to our fellow Cleveland guys that are going to get to watch the Tour de Force then.
Lucky.
Yeah. And then after that, we get
10-year-old me would have been down for that for sure.
Absolutely. But 10-year-old you and 32-year-old you would be down for the timeout for the Twix, right? Which
by the way, Jerry didn't even want to eat it. He just basically just danced around with it on the camera. I don't know if you even noticed that. I always love it when people have like product placement. They never drink. I always notice like the Mountain Dew. They always put the Mountain Dew in front of like as far as today's content, like things that are brought to you by Mountain Dew. There's like 3 Mountain Dews sitting in front of them for them to drink, and then it's like a 3-hour show, and then by the end of the show,
still barely anything.
Totally full. They're totally full.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and I think King had like 4 Twix bars on his table. So. But then, Kyle, we get the Shawn Michaels update we've all been waiting for, which turns out to be basically them telling us everything that happened from these 9 thugs that beat him up, which is the story they're still going with, apparently. All the way, to his match at Survivor Series, and then his match with Owen last week where he got the enziguri, basically saying that they re-aggravated that concussion, or he's got some post-concussion symptoms. And basically ends it by saying that he'll be more flamboyant and more resilient than ever when he finally returns. Ultimately,
that's what happens after you get a concussion. You become more resilient.
Yeah, and more flamboyant, apparently. Overall, I thought it was just basically kind of like a worthless update. Like, it really didn't tell us anything, I didn't think.
All it kind of did was it told you, hey, Shawn Michaels got a sustained concussion because he was wrestling normal people. Like, here's him taking a power bomb. Here's him taking a leg drop. Here's him getting Razor's Edge. Like, this is regular shit. The only thing that I actually said that, okay, that could make sense was when they played the angle of Owen Hart hitting him with the enziguri in the back of the head. Like, that triggered it. And so that I gave it some credit. Like, they made a mention of that. Which, by the way, Vince called a maneuver. Because he can't say enziguri.
Well, of course. I would expect nothing less from Vince. Then, Kyle, we get the Aja Kong and Tomako Watanabe versus Alundra Braze and Kyoko Inoue. I probably butchered those names.
I think you actually did better than I thought.
Ultimately, my first inclination is we've got a women's tag team match on Raw. The same night we have a tag team women's match on Nitro.
There's no way this is a coincidence. There's no fucking way. Nitro saw this and decided they were going to just replay the same match. Because I still believe that they did all these recordings before World War III. So it wasn't like, because I know they had that tag match at World War III, and I don't think Raw responded with that. They had taped that match a while ago.
Oh, I'm sure this is definitely, yeah, I could see Nitro being the one to copy it. It was funny to me as they started out with this match by mentioning that Aja Kong is not bulimic like Princess Di, so I always enjoy the modern day stories, the pop culture references that are going on. And apparently Princess Diana was well in the news at this point for multiple things, one of them being bulimic. And then another one, as we get later into the match, she must be practicing safe sex like Aja Kong. So just a weird comment for Vince to make, but I guess he was trying to be relevant to modern pop culture.
I totally zonked out. I think it was almost the end of the match, and after the 3rd or 4th time they mentioned Princess Diana, I'm like, okay, why the hell are they talking about Princess Diana? Like, I was trying to ignore it, being like, yeah, it's probably some current pop culture reference of some sorts, but they just kept on hammering it. I'm like, who gives a shit?
Right?
Maybe maybe 10-year-old me gave a shit. Maybe I knew more about it in '95, but 2017, it was very, very frustrating going back and watching a show from 22 years ago. Sorry.
What about 2017? Was 2017 you interested in what Barry Dudinsky was selling this week, Kyle? Of course, it's the brand new Bret the Hitman Hart championship T-shirt. Of course, he's got all the titles and listed at how many tag team champion, intercontinental champion, and world champion he is.
Oh, but sorry, gotta cut you off. We're out of time. The match just started.
Yeah, yep, and that's exactly how it went. The match itself was pretty good, Kyle. Not as good as the women's match on Nitro, but easily one of the better matches that we've seen on Raw in a little bit, which, again, kind of surprising. You saw Kyoko had a couple good aerial moves. Like, she sprinted up and kind of hopped up to the top rope and, ended up jumping and doing this, like, flying backwards elbow that she caught a leg on instead of probably, like, the midsection or closer to the head or chest. But overall, she looked pretty good in the match.
She overall was the offense of the match.
Right.
As far as any impressive spots really came from her.
And then there was this. How about the surfboard? They do a surfboard, which of course you've seen, many times in the past. But the person actually doing the surfboard maneuver, who's on the mat, had her shoulders down, and the ref started counting for, like she was getting pinned for a 3 count, which I don't think I've ever seen, and it makes perfect sense. Like, I applauded the referee for that.
Yeah, actually, it blew. First, I was angry. I'm like, who the hell counts on a surfboard? I was like too busy enjoying a good surf. I always enjoy a good surfboard. I mean, if one thing's going to be on my tombstone, it's going to be Kyle Hogan. He always enjoyed a good surfboard, and that was the first time I ever saw a pin count, and I was so mad. I'm like, you're making him break the hold. But then I actually thought, like, that's ingenious.
Yeah,
I never thought about that.
It's sort of like the figure 4 turning into a pin, but that's even then the person in the figure 4 is typically the one getting pinned. So it was kind of interesting that you reversed it. And now every time I watch a surfboard, I'm going to check to see if their shoulders are down.
Right. I said maybe Kyoko just didn't execute it well, where she's always supposed to I think it's supposed to rock it a little bit in order to keep your shoulders off the mat.
That very well could be it. So I'm very curious I'm looking forward to my next surfboard, I guess I should say.
We've given this surfboard 5 minutes of this podcast.
That's all right. At one point, Aja Kong, which Vince refers to as King Kong's daughter, I believe, was Vince with a great one-liner. Him and Mongo would be a hell of a commentary team.
Don't you dare speak the same, compare them at all. Don't you dare.
But Kong starts doing these like stiff kicks, sort of like how Daniel Bryan does these, no longer currently doing it, but like those kicks that he does, and which King says, the Jets could use a kicker like that. And every time the sports references come up, I have to go do some research. And the Jets this year, at the time, were 2-11 before the game the night before, and their kicker, Nick Lowry, was 17 of 21 for kicks on the year, which that's pretty good. He didn't miss any of his extra points. 2 of his 4 misses on the year were from 50 plus, which back in '95 isn't that bad.
But then again, also back then, 95, you shouldn't be missing any extra point. Not like today's product.
Right, he didn't miss any extra points too. But I'm saying he only had 4 misses on the year, and 2 of them were for 50 plus. So I went to look. I'm like, maybe he just had a rough day the day before this match aired. So I looked at that. The 2-11 Jets upset the 5-6 Seahawks, who were riding a 4-game winning streak. They won 16-10, and he went 3 for 4 that day, and he was kicking on the road. So all in all, I think that's a fantastic week for a kicker. And I got to say, King, your sports analogy there failed. So I'm sorry. That said, the match itself, they start getting lazy towards the end, Kyle, and just start tagging each other inside the ring. First, Alundra Brace takes it, and Vince kind of makes a comment like, unorthodox tag here or something like that. And then
illegal?
Yeah, basically. Aja Kong decides she's going to do the same thing. And then at one point, Aja's partner just comes into the ring and scoop slams the opponent to set it up for Aja, which I thought was funny. Ultimately, Aja Kong and I don't remember which one, Tomoko. Win the match. For me, I gave it 2 stars. It was a solid match. I think it got a little sloppy towards the end.
It kind of got chaotic, yeah.
It was. I think if they kept it a little less chaotic there towards the end, it would have been probably like a maybe 2.25 to 2.5 star match. Solid, but not as good as the Nitro match for me. What'd you think, Kyle?
I gave it just a little bit less of a rating than the Nitro match. Actually, I gave it a 2.5. Another surprising effort by the ladies of wrestling. I'm actually a bit surprised that both shows gave the ladies this much time to have a match. I think this was the longest match on the Raw card. And still have to give the better match to Nitro. The reason why I still kept it close is because I was just waiting for one big hit, and it was towards the very end. Kong throws, I believe it was Kyoko, does like a belly to back suplex and just drops her on her neck. And that's the one thing I always enjoy is, somebody just overthrowing somebody and making the fall look just really, really bad, which I thought that would be a good way to end the match. Like, oh God, she's not getting up from that. But instead, Kong picks her up and then does some weird backhand to knock her out, kind of like a backhand to the jaw, and then pins her. I thought that was kind of a shitty way to win the match. I think that you already basically fucked her up on the move before. Just pin her then. But still, overall, good match. I also think that we spent most of the discussion here talking about either the Jets or a surfboard.
And that's fine. Sometimes you just got to discuss that kind of stuff. It's the important stuff. It's the details, Kyle. It's all, everything. The success is in the details.
I hear you.
After the match, we get a recap of Diesel, who snapped after his title match when he lost against Bret Hart at Survivor Series. They followed that up with his promo last week that he cut that you and I both really enjoyed and thought it was kind of the first real glimpse into the Kevin Nash coming out of the Diesel character. And they followed this up with the Bret Hart interview with the fat Brother Love. I got to say, Kyle, I don't know about you, did it sound like the crowd was really hot? Real he had some real bad heat, real big heat? Brother Love, that is?
No, I gave it some credit. I really wasn't interested in it, but I think the way he did the interview with the whole cutting off Brett during every single question, I actually thought that was really good. But the only problem I had with the overall interview was that it's too slow for me. This is not an interview that would be able to be conducted in the 98, 99. Way too fast. Everything is just go during that era. 95, you could get away with it, but you definitely couldn't get away with it a couple of years later. But no, yeah, absolutely, there definitely was heat. You got the world champion, and then you got this guy who is clearly, obviously, a heel interviewer, kind of like Jerry, who is just basically asking a lot of, for the most part, irrelevant questions just to get under the champion's skin. Talking about The Undertaker and obviously him giving himself credit for bringing him into the WWF and all this other stuff. Who gives a shit about The Undertaker? Undertaker's completely irrelevant to this whole discussion, but he decided he wanted to bring it up just to make Bret Hart look like a fool on TV. Yeah,
and like you said, he talks about that. Of course, eventually Bret Hart is able to talk. He kind of grabs Brother Love by the arm, holds the mic to his face, and brings up talking about the British Bulldog. Of course, he brings up Wembley Stadium, 1992,
82,000 people,
and how he lost. And then the whole thing, Kyle. Bob Backlund comes out of nowhere, drops that crossface chicken wing on Bret Hart. Apparently, bringing up, he still has a little pent up frustration with Bret Hart from last year when he lost the title to Bret. So.
He beat Bret.
He beat Bret.
So why does he have a grudge against Bret? He beat Bret.
That's great. I don't know. I was thinking he lost, and then I realized no, he beat Bret and then lost to Diesel. So right. Not sure what Backlund's doing there. Just ending the segment one way or another. And how else are you saved by that segment, Kyle? We get Triple H versus John Crystal. Before the match starts, we get Henry Godwinn doing a little promo at the farm, introducing you to his pigs. Triple H hits a pedigree, 1-star match. I have nothing more to add to this.
Typical squash, really no offense, pedigree. I gave it 1.5 stars, only because if it's a decent squash match, I gave it 2. This was not a half decent squash match. I gave it 1.5 stars. Usually a star is reserved when people fuck up in a match.
I think this was the weakest of weak squash matches. It was just so short and unentertaining to me. A match like this would not last in today's wrestling.
Oh no, not at all. Oh God, no.
But and even back then, it would only work a match this quick should only be when you have someone like the Giant when he won his squash match and when he chokeslammed whoever it was. I can't even think who he beat. Now. Cobra. There we go.
Come on, dude, get your track together. Also, let's be on the John Crystal watch now. See if he carries Mabel to the ring a couple weeks later.
There you go. After this, we get a promo for In Your House, Kyle. We got Razor Ramon and Marty Jannetty teaming up against 1-2-3 Kid and good old Cycle Sid. And then we've also got Owen Hart has an open challenge. So they cut a little promo with him and Cornette, and Owen basically makes fun of how he put Shawn out of commission, which Vince is not happy about. And we'll have to see who ends up accepting that open challenge, Kyle. Do you got any guesses?
Oh, who actually takes on Owen Hart?
Yeah.
No, I don't care enough at this point.
Fair enough. Well, then, if you don't care enough about that, I'm sure you care about Kama versus The Undertaker here in the main event.
I'm psyched. Can't wait.
Speaking of psych, it's not going to be Kama in this main event. Sir Mo's coming out because fuck your promoted main events. That this is now 2 weeks in a row, Kyle, that our main event is not as they previously promoted it to be. So of course isn't
that 3 weeks in a row? What was last 2 weeks ago? It was. I think it's 3 weeks in a row they fucked up.
Did they do last week's was wrong? I remember they removed the stipulation of the title match with Razor.
Right, that was 2 weeks ago.
That was 2 weeks ago.
Last week, maybe they stuck with what they were doing.
Oh no, they stick. Yeah, because last week was Shawn Michaels and Owen Hart. You didn't get an end to it, but it was fine. It was the match.
Yeah.
So 2 out of the last 3 weeks. Excuse me.
Gotcha. Hey, we're here to make sure that we're correcting ourselves and making sure that we're being as accurate as we can be.
That's right. So Ted DiBiase, of course, paid for Sir Mo to be in this match. Kama, of course, coming out on crutches because he is hurt, Kyle. And
elastic jeans, elastic acid wash jeans.
It's absolutely a great look for him. We go to commercial before the match starts. We come back and they're promoting that Intercontinental title match with Dean and Razor Ramon next week on Raw. We'll see if that actually happens or not.
Right.
What'd you think about this main event of now Sir Mo versus The Undertaker?
Well, I mean, just like anybody else, you should be completely angry about this, even though I don't really care too much about the Ultimate Fighting Machine, Kama. At least he being in the match made more sense because, obviously he has the melted down chains. Putting Sir Mo in the match, it just made no sense because clearly Kama is not hurt, so why doesn't he just wrestle? Sir Mo does not belong in a main event of any sorts, but then again, John Crystal doesn't deserve to be in a match either. We beggars can't be choosers, I suppose. But anyways, Bone Cold Undertaker. I thought that was awesome when Vince said that, like, it's bone cold in the arena. But he makes his way to the ring. They keep on calling the mask on his face an appliance. And I'm like, it's a mask.
It's a mask. I don't know why they kept being really weird about that.
But then again, later on in the match, you'll see that Mo kind of like punches him in the face, and it hurts him. It almost makes it seem like it's not a mask; it's like a metal plate, like Lex Luger, but for your face. But anyways, we know that shocker, Kama's not injured. It only takes about 30 seconds into the match to find out he's not. He attacks Taker when he's on the outside. Obviously, who was reffing this match? White, I believe.
Yeah, it was White.
He doesn't see any of this, obviously. Mo is trying to distract the ref as good as he can. But Vince called it all along. He smelled $1 million rat from the beginning, so well done, Vince, for ruining that fucking story at the beginning of the match. In classic Raw form, we get another commercial break less than 2 minutes after the last one with Vince yelling that he saw Mabel. I think that was just to kind of bait and switch, kind of keep you guys hooked and stay on we got to go to commercial. Oh, wait, is that Mabel? And then we come back. Mabel's not there. He's just, that's just good old Vince, just keeping everyone hooked to the TV. Mo then decides, like I said, it's a good idea to start punching a man with an appliance on his face. Not once, but twice. You would think, do it the first time, shame on you, second, twice, or shame on, I don't know, whatever the saying is. I'm being Mongo right now. Can't get my words together. So I just kind of joked and said the Undertaker's face has been upgraded to Samoan head status. Taker beats up on Mo and then runs out to the outside to beat on Kama, which causes Kama and $1 Million Man to just leave. Which then, Sir Mo is now by himself against Undertaker, which obviously is going to win. a seizure-inducing chokeslam for the win. I think you mentioned something along the lines of a Kevin Sullivan.
Yeah, he gave a
homage.
shout out to the Taskmaster right there with that post chokeslam seizure.
Yes, absolutely. I gave this a 1 3/4 star match. I was in no mood to see Sir Mo in a main event match, let alone with The Undertaker. I wanted this grudge match between Kama and Taker, which made more sense. I mean, it's once again, it's quite dated. And I think the whole storyline of everyone taking turns stealing the urn and also it's kind of an old storyline, but at least putting Kama in the match made more sense for that sake. But the match overall was all right, but we knew who was going to win. But also, I was just happy to see Undertaker back on Raw.
Yeah, I gave it a star and 3/4 as well. Really, Sir Mo should never main event anything on Raw, especially as a singles competitor. It was fine for what it was, but ultimately I would have preferred seeing Kama and Undertaker in that match. It's kind of weird, Kyle, because then after the match, King Mabel does come out. He goes for the gold chain, which Undertaker says too slow, grabs it from him, then proceeds to hand it to Paul Bearer.
Why would you hand it to Paul Bearer?
Hey, for safekeeping, and now he's got the power of the Undertaker. And then Jim Cornette and Yokozuna come out, so Yokozuna distracts Undertaker long enough for King Mabel to attack Paul Bearer and get the gold chain. So now he's got the power of the Undertaker.
Good Vince impression, by the way.
Thank you. So ultimately, Undertaker's kind of feuding with Kama, Yokozuna, and King Mabel all simultaneously, and I don't think I'm interested in any of them. After that, Kyle, we kind of close out the show with Vince and King. They're promoting next week's Dean Douglas Intercontinental title rematch, as well as Marty Jannetty versus Cycle Sid. So that'll be a fun one, I guess.
For what that's worth.
Right. Overall, Kyle, what'd you think about Raw?
Raw was kind of a snooze fest this week. 2 squash matches, a less than stellar main event with the same song and dance with the urn, with a message change from being at least half interesting to not interesting at all. I'm really hating the whole idea of, promoting a match to get you kind of excited for the next week and then completely changing it when you're actually watching the show. I feel like it's kind of insulting to the audience. The women's tag match was the only breath of fresh air on the show.
Yeah, I mean, for me, after such a reality-based Raw we had last week with Kevin Nash kind of cutting that promo on Vince about, actually calling... It's funny as they replayed that promo this week and they cut out the part where he basically says something about, I'm not your puppet, Vince. I forget exactly what he worded. I'm not going to be your corporate whatever to Vince. They cut that part out. Of course, they had the reality with Shawn Michaels. Is he or isn't he? Is that a shoot or not? This week we go back to, squash matches left and right with Triple H's lasting, a minute and a half and Ahmed Johnson's lasting a minute and a half, and then a main event where it's not even two good people. It's Undertaker and Sir Mo. So ultimately the women's tag match was the best part of the show, and it was solid, better than I expected, but, overall the show itself kind of fell flat. So not ideal, and I'd say, Kyle, I think we're both on the same page. Nitro wins this week.
Yeah, I mean it's not a controversial thing to say. Definitely more impactful matches on Nitro. They did a better job of talking about what happened in World War III. There was more star power, more intrigue going forward as the Starcade matches might slowly start to materialize. It's very confusing, as far as like what the hell is actually going on. But at least the show is making me feel something. Even though I'm a little frustrated with what's going on, I'm a bit like kind of confused. But it's enough confusion that I'm like, all right, I'll see. I'll go for the ride. You know what I mean? Like I'll watch next week and see if you find some way to kind of shuffle things in order, or if this continues to be chaotic. As long as it's a good chaotic, I'm okay with it. WWF right now is a very stale place right now, and I think that it really falls down to the problem of taping 3 to 4 shows at once. It just makes for really bad cohesion and storytelling because it takes like 2 to 3 weeks to mature and go forward with any storyline. And that's for an audience that I'm sure doesn't have that kind of patience, especially when there's another product that you're going up against that's doing, I think, a better job of going week to week. It's right now. It's not a very good formula.
And I think it's a formula that's going to stick for a while, unfortunately. But I agree. Nitro won. They're being more consistent with their storytelling, and they actually had a decent follow up to a pay-per-view, which is something we haven't really seen much of yet. Not only did we find out what happened with the pay-per-views, but they actually brought a lot of the star power to the show, which, like you said, Kyle, they typically, these post pay-per-views for WCW resulted in a lot of Disco Inferno and Alex Wright type matches, and here we had all of the big players in it. So good to see that, and a great women's tag team match, which I didn't think I would say I would see in 1995 on either wrestling program. So.
Right, and you know what? Another thing I also thought about, I think this is one of the first weeks that we don't see Eddie Guerrero at all in any match.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I
feel like he's almost like 11 out of 12 or like 10 out of 12 in all the Nitros.
He's been on a lot of them. I think he wasn't there, the first couple, but once he showed up, he seemed to be a regular, reoccurring character. As for the Nielsen ratings, Kyle, Raw remained 2.3, which is what it was last week. And the big reveal, Nitro, as you know, following a pay-per-view, the streak has been every pay-per-view since we started. The following show has dropped in ratings. Well, Kyle, the streak is over. Nitro got a 2.5, which means they remain the same as a 2.5 from last week. So it didn't improve, but it did not get worse, which, I'll take. I think that's a positive sign.
They'll definitely take for sure, yes.
But ultimately, that's the show this week, Kyle. So for those of you out there, if you haven't subscribed yet to the show on iTunes or Google Play, what are you waiting for? Go out there, subscribe, leave us a review.
What do you got, rocks in your head?
That's right. You must be dumber than dirt. We need to get Mongo to promote our show.
We do. If the ratings are going very well on Nitro, it must be because Mongo is just beating the shit out of the crowd and the audience. We got to start doing that too,
Absolutely. Feel free to give us a follow on Twitter. Go like us on Facebook, or also follow us on Instagram. We'll be posting on all there. Leave us some feedback. Let us know what you thought about the shows. And as always, you can go to MondayNightTours.com for all of these social media accounts, our podcast, all that kind of fun stuff. And now that you're done watching this week, go check out the December 4th, 1995 editions of Raw Nitro, and we will be right back here next week to break that all down with you, see what's happening, see how these stories are progressing, and who's going to have the power of The Undertaker. For Kyle Hogan, I am Josh Kaiser, and we will see you next time on the Monday Night Tours.
Have a good Tuesday. See ya.